Okay, today I'm working with a 2006 Ford Fusion 3.0, and the transmission, Ford designates the transmission as the F21. A more common name for this transmission is the TF81SC. This is a 6-speed front-wheel drive transmission. The problem is I got a hard code of P0717, no input speed signal. So I get the call from my wholesale account. He explains it to me. He says, I'm just going to send the guy down and you can deal with him and just let me know what's going on. So he gets here, leaves the car, and then we go out to check it, scan it, of course. I got code P0717. I start the car and I go to my data list for the transmission, and I have, many things listed, but I go to input speed sensor running in park. I have no input speed at all. I try to clear the code. It cleared for maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It comes right back. So we're dealing with a hard code. Put the car in drive, hard engagement, reverse hard engagement, drive it down the block. I actually have an input speed sensor reading, which I'll explain why I had that. But I have nothing in park. So the way this transmission is situated, this is the computer. This is not the computer out of the car, but it is a computer from one of those transmissions because I've done one. And the way this is your connector is here for the computer, and this plugs right into the harness that sticks out of the transmission. On any, like say a 4L60E, the connector sticks up, you plug the harness in, and you have your wire leads that go up to the computer. All right, this does not have that. This thing plugs right in, the linkage goes through here, your range sensor is in here, your power grounds and communication lines coming through here. Even when you look up a wiring diagram, about 6 wires, it shows you input powers, grounds, and communication lines. All right, because everything else is internal to this, so there is no wiring for that. And with this hard code, you're dealing with a speed sensor, an internal harness, or the computer itself. So you got to kind of figure out how to do this to process of elimination to see what's good and what's bad. All right, so the first thing we did, we popped the hood, we were looking at it. Right above the computer runs a water line that had a dripping on the computer. So, we're looking at that and say, okay, it's very possible that we're dealing with a bad computer, but I don't want to say that yet. So we unbolt it, take the linkage off, take the 3 bolts out, pull it out. Got a little corrosion here on actually one of the pins for the input speed sensor. So we clean that up, clean everything up, put it back in, start it, nothing. Code comes right back again. No input reading in park at all. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to ohm out the speed sensors. And I pull up I guess like a pin-up chart of this. And it tells me I believe it was pin 12 and 13. And this transmission also is similar, just to let you know, similar to the 09G. The speed sensors ohm the same. I don't know if they are the same, but they ohm the same. That would be 0.50 M. So we got to go on the high scale, the million scale, and we ohm these things out, and we're getting a good reading for the speed sensor. We checked for short to ground. We didn't see any short to ground. So, now again, we're thinking, it could be the TCM, but, still not 100% sure. I want to be 100% sure before I call this guy with my diagnosis. So what I elected to do, I ordered a sensor in case I need it, and here it is. All right, I didn't really know what the sensor looked like. I thought, honestly, this has a lead, the sensor is down here, and this has a lead on it that comes up here. And the internal harness plugs into this. I'm thinking the sensor could be just into the case behind the valve body. I got to pull the valve body to ohm the sensor, because one of the things they wanted you to do, if it ohmed okay, then they wanted you to actually take the side cover down and ohm the sensor all by itself. And I'm like, well, might have to pull the valve body down. I said, let me see what the sensor looks like. Just hang out for a day. We'll see what it looks like when it gets here. It got here, and I said, okay, we should just be able to have to take the side cover down, which there was plenty of room to do. So we go ahead and take the side cover down, and the two connectors, you know, the input connector and the output connector are right there. We ohm the sensor by itself, and it seems like it ohms okay. So, you know, I'm just kind of looking at it and I'm saying, you know what, if there is a problem, we should be able to figure it out. And the way we can do that, if it'll work, is there's a bracket where the wires go in to kind of keep them where they're supposed to be. So I took the bracket off, I unplugged the sensors, and what I actually did to see what was going on is I plugged the input speed sensor into the output internal harness connector and vice versa. So now when I start the car, if the sensor is good, I should have a reading in park on my output speed sensor. And as of course, as you know, when you get any reading on an output speed sensor, you have to be moving. So we had to take the lines off because they're in the way, the cooler lines, and of course we're just going to start off for a quick second. So I was able to swap the connectors. We put the lines back. We had to take them off to get the pan off. That was the only thing in the way. Plenty of room though. And we put it back in, secured it, let the car down. We had it, my scanner on it, customized the data list for the input and the output speed sensor only. Started it up in a split second, had a reading in park on the output speed sensor. Okay, we know the input speed sensor is reading, and at this point we know the computer is bad. Okay, so now the next question, if that is the case, and you have the hard engagements, and then you start moving, why does this thing read perfectly on the input speed sensor when everything is plugged in the way it should be? Well, the reason why that is because this transmission, or this TCM, uses a substitute signal. I believe it might be the engine speed signal as the input RPM when the sensor is bad. It's like a backup signal. So this TCM has the capability of doing that. So what I want to do now is take you over to the car. I didn't put the pan back yet because I wanted to show you where the input speed sensor is. Actually, let me give you a close-up shot of this side first. Where the input and output speed sensors are, I'll show you what I did cross the connections. I'll show you the color of the wires. So there's really no question which is which. I can identify them for you. And I didn't know it was going to be. I said, let's take a chance. Let's see. I unplugged it. I plugged right in. I says, wow, this is great. So that's how I determined that we were dealing with a bad TCM. And again, it could be when you're dealing with an issue like this, you know, and there is no, you can't put, you know, a scope on it to check to see if you get a signal. I had a video on a Dodge Dakota, I think it was a 545 RFE, that had a very erratic input signal with the P0717. So what I did on the video was I put a graphing meter or a small scope, and I was graphing the signal coming right out of the sensor, which was perfect. But when you look on the scan tool, it was very erratic. So that led me to a computer, which it was the computer. So that was, you know, normally how I would tell what we're dealing with, but this, you can't do that. So let me give you a close-up shot of this computer, what this thing looks like. I didn't want to open this bag because I do not need this sensor down. I don't want to open it and have an issue when I return it. So I'll get a little closer, I'll show you this, then I'm going to go over to the car. Again, I still have the side cover down, and I can show you where the sensors are. All right, so let me just get a little closer, we'll take a look at this computer. All right, so here is the computer. This, again, out of a Mazda, but it's the same deal. All right, the linkage, you know, you've put the linkage is on, sticking out of the transmission, you put this over it, and this will turn. So you have your, you know, range switch built in here as well. You bolt it down to the transmission. Your powers, grounds, and communication lines only come in through here. Okay, and here is where it plugs right into the transmission. You do have a seal around here, which I think is over there with the car. Well, actually, the computer is installed. Again, this isn't the computer. The computer is installed on the car because that's how we were testing it. But there is a seal in here to keep the moisture and stuff out. But again, this thing had a constant drip from the water hose. That will have to be fixed by the shop that sent it here because I don't want new computer that we may be getting go bad. So this thing plugs right into the transmission connector that sticks up through the case. All right, so this is what the transmission TCM looks like, and you have a tag right here. And again, from the water dripping on it, there is absolutely no numbers left on this thing. It's there is a piece of paper, you know, stuck on it, but again, I called around. What are the numbers? Don't have them. So we either got to get it from the dealer, which is probably about $1,100, or we can kind of just take a chance. I can get a used one for a couple $100, put it on, see how it works, but I'm going to leave that up to the customer. I'm not sure how far he wants to go with this. I don't know what they're thinking until I tell them, hey, you know, it's diagnostic time, it's labor, aren't on the computer, and it's the computer from the dealer for $1,100. You know, at that point, who knows what he's going to want to do. All right, and here is the sensor. All right, here is the connector here, and the sensor down there. Again, I don't want to open this bag. So that's that, and let me take you over to the car now, and we'll take a look with the side cover off. So I'm going to set up again underneath the car. All right, so here we are with the side cover down, looking at the valve body. All right, this here is your input speed sensor. You got the red and white wire. This one here is your output speed sensor, orange and blue wire. This is your output speed sensor connector for the internal harness, and your input speed sensor connector is right here. So what I did, I said, you know, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's give it a shot. I just took the input speed sensor, plugged it right in like that. I moved this bracket loose, so see it's still a little loose. I have to just tighten that bolt. And I just plugged this into here as well, just to plug it in so it doesn't possibly set another code or something. But again, it was just a quick 2-second start. Right here is where, if you could see this, okay, the lines go right here, so I'm gonna make sure you put these lines back. I just started this thing up quickly for 2 seconds, honestly. I don't wanna go through the trouble of putting the side cover back on. Didn't really make a mess, to be honest with you, for the 2 seconds it was running, but I had we let it down, I had the scanner ready to go, key on, engine off. I cranked it, immediately showed a reading on the output speed. So with the input speed sensor plugged in to the output speed sensor connector, it showed a reading. So I know at that point, 100%, that my TCM is no good. And that's how I figured it out. So I'm just waiting to hear. I called my wholesale account and told him what was going on, and he was going to look for a computer, and I think he might have reached out to the customer. So you just can't forget to undo the connectors if you're going to put this thing back together. So that's how I determined that we're dealing with a bad computer. Maybe I can let this card down and give you a shot of where the computer lives on this. Yeah, I guess I can do that. Just got to move some stuff out of the way. So those are the sensors. Again, you can go by wire color, and the wire colors are the same here too, so there's no mistake for the input and the output speed sensor. All right, so just give me a minute. I'll show you where this computer lives on this car, and we can finish up the video, so I'll be right back. All right, so here is a shot of the computer. That is no good. Here's your linkage setup. Here's the tag that should have numbers on it that has nothing, and the computer is bolted right to the trans. You got some antifreeze sitting right here, probably from this line dripping, and I believe at this point I'm going to say that's probably what killed the computer. And the valve body, you know, side cover is off, valve body is right here. But I did want to give you a shot, since we had the airbox off and stuff like that, of where this computer lives. So again, we're dealing with the 2006 Ford Fusion. Transmission is the TF81SC 6-speed front wheel drive transmission, and hard code P0717, no input speed signal. What we did was we crossed the connectors between the input and output, and I did have a reading on the output speed, which told me the input speed sensor is good. So at this point, and the internal wiring harness is good. So at this point, we're dealing with a bad TCM. All right, and the wires around back here is where they come in, you know, the powers, grounds, and communication data lines. All right, so that is about it. So I thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and we will see you next one.